Chapter 1. The Evil Within. Portsmouth was a city that thrummed with life, its busy streets and modern facades hiding a labyrinth of secrets. Among the bustling markets, crowded pubs, and the constant flow of people, there were places where the light didn't reach, where the shadows were deep and the air thick with unspoken wrongs. Detective Nicholas Cain knew these places well, for he had walked among them for longer than any of the city's inhabitants could ever guess. Tonight, Cain and his partner, Detective Marcus Brown, were hunting something far darker than the usual criminal fare. The rumors had started quietly. Whispers of children vanishing from the edges of society, those without strong ties, the ones who wouldn't be missed. The kind of children who fell through the cracks. It was the kind of case that turned Cain's blood cold, even after centuries of confronting humanity's darkest impulses. As the weeks passed, the rumors grew louder, fueled by the stories of a handful of terrified, broken children who had escaped, children who spoke of men with too much power and no conscience. These men operated with impunity, shielded by connections that reached into the highest echelons of society. The law seemed powerless to touch them. The police had tried, of course. Reports were filed, investigations opened, but every time they got close, the cases were mysteriously dropped, witnesses recanted, and evidence vanished. It was as if the very system designed to protect the innocent had been corrupted, turned against them by those who wielded the influence from behind closed doors. But Cain and Marcus weren't bound by the same limitations. They operated in the shadows, where the rules were different and justice was something far more primal. Marcus found the first solid lead, though how he got it he kept to himself. Marcus had always been resourceful, drawing from a past that Cain only knew in fragments, a history steeped in the murky dealings of the streets, where favors and fear were often the currency. Whatever his methods, they often led to answers, though Cain had learned not to pry into the specifics. A name whispered in a back alley, a debt called in, or perhaps a connection from his old life, before Cain had pulled him into the world of vampires and shadows. The name had led them to the Regal Palace nightclub, a once lavish establishment now reduced to a derelict shell of its former glory. Located on a busy main road in the North End area of Portsmouth, the building was surrounded by life and activity, its decay almost invisible amidst the bright lights of the shops and eateries that had sprung up around it. "Regal Palace," Marcus had said, the name heavy on his tongue as they stood outside the precinct, the sounds of the city echoing around them. "I didn't think this place was still standing." Cain had glanced at the address, a sense of grim satisfaction settling in his chest. "It's not supposed to be." The nightclub had been a known hotspot for illicit activities in its heyday, but it had been shuttered for years, its name all but forgotten by the general public. Officially, it was condemned, set for demolition, but someone had kept the place off the radar, a perfect front for something foul. They had spent days gathering intel, piecing together the connections that had kept the law at bay. The men they were after were untouchable by traditional means. Wealthy, well-connected, with ties to politicians, business moguls, and even members of law enforcement. Whenever the investigation got too close, someone with the right leverage would make a call, and the case would disappear. It was a closed circle of power, one that left no trace and ensured that those involved could continue their predations without fear of consequences. But Cain had his own ways of finding the truth. Under the cover of night, he had tracked the whispers to their source, using his preternatural senses to sift through the layers of deception. Marcus, too, had contacts, people who lived in the underbelly of Portsmouth, who saw and heard things that others didn't. Together, they had identified the core members of the ring and discovered that their base of operations was the Regal Palace. It was a place where deals were made, where victims were taken and never seen again. Now, as they stood on the crowded sidewalk outside the nightclub, the reality of what they were about to do settled over them like a heavy shroud. The old building was a blight on the otherwise busy and thriving street. People walked by without giving it a second glance, their minds on their own business, oblivious to the horror concealed behind those crumbling walls.